Indiana can sort of cement itself as we are no longer this team that's going to be fighting for 6 wins anymore.
Malachi Toney, is he going to be ready?
Dante Moore, he showed improvement, better command.
What's going on, y'all? Bud Elliott here of the Cover 3 podcast, and this is Summer School. We are back in session today, joined by our buddy Jackson Moore, BarkBoard.com, everything you need for Fresno State, like the Fresno State source out there. Jackson, how you been, man?
Been good. Thanks for having me on.
Good to see you, man. So pretty nice year for Fresno last year. 9-4, 7-2 in the Mountain West. They beat, who'd they beat in the bowl game? They won the bowl game.
Beat Miami of Ohio.
Miami, Ohio. There we go. Okay. That's solid. Matt Ince, entering year 2. Year 1, like pretty successful season, I would say, for him. We were kind of wondering like how the transition would go. I remember we did last year's episode. What's kind of the general vibe there now in Fresno around the program?
Yeah, vibes are up. You wondered how someone would come in and transition it like the way he did, if it would be reflected well by the players, if personalities. You're going from Coach Tedford and Coach Skipper, who are very well known around here, to a guy that no one knew much about in Coach Ince. And I mean, he hit all the right notes. And I think even more evident than the 9 wins last year was this offseason, where guys that have been here for a long time could have gone and probably gotten more money elsewhere, maybe even played in some cases at receiver, some better schemes. They all opted to stay pretty much. The Bulldogs were like 3rd in the nation as far as teams that did not lose players to the portal as production wise. Really, Richie Anderson was the only player that left to Texas A&M. So you can see not only did they have success in the win column last year, but the guys are bought in. It wasn't a 1-year thing. It doesn't look like.
So you mentioned receiver and you mentioned like the offense. I want to kind of dive in there. So Josh Davis comes in as OC, right, from San Diego State, which is obviously, Sean Lewis's system there. Are they going to start running the veer and shoot under Matt Ince? Like, is that happening? Am I reading too much into this?
So Davis was from the other SDSU, so the South Dakotas.
Oh, so. South Dakota. Oh, my bad. I read SDSU on my sheet. And I was like, wait a second. Okay. Yeah. That makes a lot of sense that, yes, like maybe not quite as friendly for receivers.
But it is a good question, though, because the coaching staff said they're going to run the ball a little more with the quarterback. So they're going to be more pro style. But I think what they found out last year, they kind of let a guy go in Joshua Wood, who was a runner. And then they got to the season and they had a great running game and not a lot of great quarterbacks. And it would have been nice to have a runner. So I think they're getting that ready now. So in case the passing game's not there, they can run the quarterback too.
Well, let's go to QB then. So Martin comes over from Maryland, and they still have Jaden Mandel, who is kind of the in-house, knows the system. Coming out of spring, like, do you have a read on who's ahead here?
Well, on paper, it should be Christian Martin. We haven't gotten to see a lot of access of the 11-on-11 to see where it's really at, but they put in a lot of effort. They had some money set aside for NIL to go get a quarterback. I don't think they kind of checked all the boxes probably they were hoping to with that cash, but they got the best available in Christian Martin. He was the backup at Maryland, got stuck behind Malik Washington and wanted to play, and it seems like a pretty ideal fit. And I think he's a good fit for the system too. Nice one-read quarterback with a good arm, and he's like 6'3", 6'4", 230 pounds, a big body, and can push ahead and get some yards with his legs if he needs to. So it seems like a good fit, but it's been him and Mandel at the top. They've been battling out, and Mandel was here last year. He's a fan favorite, a local, and he also can do some things with his legs too.
Do you have a read on how Ince is going to play? Like, if it's truly a battle down the stretch, they have this like major opener at USC, but then you get Sac State and at San Jose, which lost quite a bit. Like, I feel like you have 2 much softer games after clearly the opener at USC. Is there any hint that like he might play both early, or do you think he's more the type of guy to name a starter and just roll with it?
It's as good as last season was. On paper, you talk about the expectations and where they ended up. The quarterback situation kind of left a sour taste in some of the fans' mouths, and maybe even within the team. They started EJ Warner for a lot of the year. He never really went over the fans, and then they went to Carson Conklin and immediately got shut out at home. It was, and then they go back to Warner at the end of the season. It left a lot of people scratching their heads. So I don't think you can count out really anything when it comes to the quarterback situation here, but curious to see if maybe they dial it back based off how last year was a little more volatile. Yeah. I assume Martin's going to be the guy, and I think they would ride him until there's a reason not to, but still to be determined.
So quarterback, a little bit uncertainty. Running back, no uncertainty with Rayshon Luke coming back. Was one of the very best running backs in the conference last year. Anywhere they're expecting him to be better, and like who else is going to complement him in that room?
Yeah, Luke, I think the biggest thing for him is just expanding his role. They had 5 running backs last year they played. He got dinged up a bit, and I don't think they really realized how versatile he was till late in the year. I think maybe he was probably going to be more of a gadget back, and then he really became the guy until he got too worn down to do it anymore. So I think they're going to look for different ways to get him involved, maybe be more of the featured guy. But Bryson Donaldson, he had 23 carries in one of the first couple of weeks of the season and just kind of faded away. He had surgery this offseason, so don't know if maybe he wasn't quite all there. I think the two of them are going to be really important together. And then they brought in Tariq Thomas, who had 1,500 career yards at Bucknell the last 2 years as an underclassman. He should be involved. And they also bring back Brandon Ramirez, who had a role. He might be out with injury. We're keeping an eye on that. Julius Gillick, a redshirt freshman, is a banger. So, I mean, they could be very well 4 or 5 deep again this year, but you want to get the ball to Luke as many times as you can. They're fortunate he stayed.
For sure. So Freeman comes back as the number 1 receiver. Really, like as you mentioned at the top, like kind of the whole receiver group comes back here. Is there anybody who we think is kind of close to making the leap to being much better than they were last year and kind of shake this thing up?
Yeah, last year for most of the season, I think if you said all the receivers were coming back, that might have been a bad thing. The receiver unit wasn't great, and Josiah Freeman was supposed to graduate, and you figured maybe if he got an extra year, he'd probably go somewhere else and get money. Apparently, Ole Miss came in when they weren't supposed to, and he turned them down still. So that's been a big storyline. But the end of the season, they started to turn a corner. Ezekiel Abbott was, when healthy, the number 2 guy, and it was easy to forget about him when he missed some time in the middle of the year. He's healthy, and he should play a big role. But the big one to watch is Harold Duvall. He was a 4-star recruit last year for the Dogs and didn't enroll early, didn't quite catch on until like November. The last couple of games, he saw more action, and he could be a breakout guy for the team. The only problem is him and Freeman kind of play that same role. So we did see the last couple of weeks, they tried to get all 3 of those receivers on the field at the same time, and it seemed like a pretty good recipe. I'd also add at tight end, Brock Liam was supposed to have a huge role last year. First drive of the season, catches a pass and hurts his knee, and we don't see him again. And that was, I believe, his first career catch. So not a name people know very much, but he should be as valuable as a top-end receiver, I would say.
So offensive line-wise, new name here, interestingly, Brian Ferentz. Coming in to coach offensive line. How does his line looking this year?
The line was probably the biggest point of the transition last year. I think from about 2021 to 24, Fresno State probably had success on offense in spite of the O-line. They just had a lot of good quarterbacks and receivers that came through, Jake Hayner most notably. But, I mean, they got it done. They found a way to turn it around. They filled that starting line largely with reserves that never did anything at Fresno State before these coachings showed up, and not so much from the transfer portal. And then you get to the end of last year and it's like, oh gosh, 3 of these guys are graduating. We got to do it all over again. But Roland Fullwood at right tackle, a big old body, 6'6", 320. He gets an extra year back, and like Josiah Freeman decides to stay. So now you only got to replace 2. Braden Walton was a huge piece for the Bulldogs last year as a true freshman that started at left tackle, and he's staying, so that's big. Edward Fanua starts at left guard. I think they've got about 3 interior linemen they feel good about rounding out things. So the fact that Fullwood stayed at a position where it would have been near impossible to get a new transfer as good as him to fill that spot, I think they're in good shape to round out the interior.
For sure. All right, we'll hit our first break here. When we come back with a little Fresno State defense, talk schedule, and get you out of here, man. Appreciate it.
When you need your sports news all the time,
we've got breaking news to bring to you.
CBS Sports HQ hits every highlight from all the sports that matter to you.
We're bringing you that breaking news right here on HQ.
CBS Sports HQ, streaming free 24/7.
Hey guys, we're back here on Summer School talking all things Fresno State with Jackson Moore of BarkBoard. All right, let's get into this defense now. Obviously, pretty solid last year, and defensive line gets 3 portal additions in Noonan, and then oh shoot, I didn't write the other guys' names down. Excuse me. But should they be pretty good again?
They should, and it's a deep defensive line, and They lose a couple of key pieces, but all in one specific role. That third down edge rusher, Finn Claypool, was a huge addition last year as a one and done, and then the 5-star Corey Foreman has graduated. So, but the D tackles are back. The other DNs are back. They've got some jumbo DNs that aren't necessarily going to play that role. Jason Jackson is a big piece for this D line. Sonny Zepra is a big DN for them. At tackle, they bring back Dejan Lafitte and Martin Owusu, who started basically all last year. They've got about 4 or 5 players that were injured all last year or most of last year that are reinforcements that are going to be playing some roles too. But that last piece, that DN, that rushing edge, you mentioned Maverick Noonan, might be a guy from Nebraska. I like Dylan Hampston, who comes from Sac State, had 8.5 sacks, I believe, last year, and could be that pass rushing specialist. And also Sione Noah, who was the guy that was hurt last year, has played a lot of snaps at Fresno State in that role. So a lot of depth. I mean, they feel like they're well beyond 4 deep at all those positions. And if they have a guy that can get that exclamation point on third downs that they had last year, they should be in really, really good shape.
Nice. All right. So when I look at this depth chart, just reading the reports and whatnot, safety kind of stands out as an area that I really have some questions about. Like what, Tierney's back, I think, and then how is this shaping up? Like they were pretty good there last year.
Yeah, they had about 4 or 5 safeties end up kind of rotating throughout the year between injuries. Cameron Braca was the one real steady guy, and he's graduated. Jaden Davis might have been in that starting lineup had he stayed. He hit the portal, went to UConn, one of the few defections on this roster. But they did bring back Ethan Tierney, who was borderline 2 starting the first couple of weeks, got hurt. He would have had a lot more numbers had he been healthy, of course. They also get an extra year back from Ryan Wilson, who was not on the depth chart to start last year and then ends up starting most of the season. So that's a big addition. He hasn't been out at spring. He's coming off of a surgery too. So a lot of the other guys getting reps, but I think they've got about 4 more options behind the starters, and they're sorting that out in spring to figure out who's going to step in as the next player up. But Taylor Powell from NIU is a big 6'3" long nickelback they had there that the Bulldogs are putting at safety, and Tierney and Powell, both from NIU. That's where the defensive coordinator, Nick Benedetto, is from. So he's been able to piece some of his former players into this defense.
If they need this defense to kind of carry them in the early part of the season, as quarterback gets figured out and the passing game kind of comes together, obviously they'll lean on the run game a lot. Is there a part of this defense? I mean, you mentioned third down pass rush, some of the mystery in the secondary. Is there another part where it's like, all right, this is kind of going to make or break them that they really need to step up?
I think it's got to be cornerback. They're losing Alzillian Hamilton and Jakari Embry, who played almost the whole season. And then you turn the page to this year. They didn't go out to the portal much. They have a lot of confidence in the players that are coming back, but not a lot of experience between them. Joe Briggs is a redshirt senior who was a big-time recruit and has just been hurt pretty much all his career. And last year he saw some time and then got hurt again. So a lot's riding on him to be that number 1 guy. But there's a bunch of redshirt sophomores that are lined up. Keontre Harris might end up being that other starter. He's a local, which is always fun for Bulldog fans. And then Loyal Muzan from New York across the country. He also is another candidate. So J.D. Williams, a cornerback coach, he's always figured that situation out. And if he does it again here, it's hard to find another hole in the defense.
Love it, man. All right. Schedule is, I'm not saying it's not crazy hard, but it's certainly not easy, especially where you have to play some of the games. But I do like that they get Boise at home, obviously. Like that's nice. They actually have to come to Fresno. At USC, if you don't spring the upset there, it doesn't really ruin the season. You'd like to have a good showing, maybe a chance, to pull a shocker, going into the fourth quarter. Like some of the trips are difficult, right? Like, San Jose, San Diego State was pretty good last year at Wazoo, at Utah State, at Texas State, but you do get Oregon State at home. You get Colorado State at home. Might be missing one more home game here. Is there a number in the conference that you feel like obviously it's the new league? Like, is there a number where you feel like, all right, if they get, 6 wins in conference or 7 wins in conference, I feel pretty good about them getting to, back to the conference championship game?
A part of it, the math is, I'm curious to see, because they're only going to count 7 games towards the conference championship.
Yeah.
It's a weird setup.
This is
tiebreakers could be interesting. And I think there's a lot of parity. So I wouldn't be surprised, maybe you have one loss team and a bunch of 2 losses log jammed to 2 or 3 trying to get that second spot. So I think you got to try to aim for 6 at least to have a shot, and that's going to be challenging with the parity again in this conference. Not a lot of games you can say for sure Fresno State's going to win that one, but there's a lot of toss-ups, and I think last year this team was built to win those types of games, and they should be in the same spot this year.
Man, Jackson, enjoyed this as always. This is like definitely one of the G5s we got to keep our eye on this year. And again, if you're looking for Fresno stuff, you have to go to BarkBoard. Like it is the source, and thankfully, for being the source, it is awesome. And you guys do a great job over there.
Thank you very much. I really appreciate it.